able to fire, it is recommended that only the owner keep the key. While gun locks are effective, Shoemaker still recommends keeping guns in a locked safe or other compartment that is not able to be penetrated without a key, fingerprint, or a combination being dialed in, because children's behavior can be unpredictable, especially if they're in a new environment. A child or prying mind, they get really curious, so probably a locked place is always the best because there's no limit to what the child might try or do, Shoemaker said. People planning on bringing their firearm with them as they do their holiday traveling should also be especially aware of the laws about transporting guns across state lines. There is no federal ban on bringing a firearm across state lines, but each state has particular laws about traveling with firearms. In Florida, for example, individuals must have a valid concealed carry license to carry a firearm on their person, but they do not need a license to keep a gun on their property, which also includes their vehicle. So in crossing into another state, individuals must obey the laws of that particular state, regardless of where the carry permit was issued. The more well-informed individuals are, the less likely they are to have an accident during the holiday season or any other time of the year, or even to run afoul of the law. Shoemaker says, I think that most of the people who do possess firearms want to obey the law. They want to comply and cooperate with law enforcement.
That's a great story, because the holidays is a time when you have a lot of family over to your home, and cousins and uncles and nephews and nieces. And
people like to prowl.
Yeah, especially kids.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes adults too. You got drunk Uncle Eddie who wanders into your master bathroom because the other bathroom was occupied, and on his way out he sees a gun laying on the nightstand and goes over and starts fiddling with it, and next thing you know, got a negligent discharge on your hands, and Uncle Eddie's no longer with us.
Or you don't know where the muzzle's going to be pointed and who may have gotten struck by that.
Yeah.
But the article was also did bring out a good point about traveling. If you're traveling with your firearms, it is so important that you know the laws of the state that you are traveling to.
It really is.
And if you just go online and look at that state's concealed carry laws and transport laws just to make sure that you are in compliance.
Well, there's a good place to look it up, too. It's called handgunlaw.us. And we also recommend in our concealed weapon class a smartphone app called Legal Heat. Legal Heat, just do a search for it. I think it's only 99 cents. And
it costs 99 cents.
Yeah, it's really well worth that price too, because
it truly is.
It has laws for all the states, and as it pertains to concealed carry.
And while we want everyone to enjoy the holidays and have fun and be cheerful and enjoy your friends and family, we also want you to be safe and make it through the new year.
Absolutely. We want you here listening to the podcast in the future. Let's move on to our defensive gun uses.
Go ahead. Make my day.
6:45 shots fired at my location.
And now, defensive gun uses from around the world and around the block.
Okay, my first story in our defensive gun use is, headline says that no charges for woman who fatally shot her ex during an attack. And this story comes to us from guns.com. The Shelby County District Attorney said on Saturday that charges will not be filed against a Memphis, Tennessee woman who shot and killed the father of her children during a domestic dispute last week. Authorities said the man, whose name was not released, came to the woman's home around 8:30 p.m. to visit with the couple's children. But during the visit, the man became involved in an altercation with the woman and her sister. The dispute apparently escalated and soon became physical. When the man began to choke the woman's sister, the woman retrieved a firearm and shot the man. Law enforcement were called to the scene, and the man was transported to a local hospital where he later died. Both women were taken to the hospital to be treated for non-life-threatening injuries. After a review of the case, a district attorney determined that the woman acted in self-defense and the shooting was justified and that no charges were warranted. The family did not wish to comment on the incident, but most of the neighbors agreed that the woman acted appropriately considering the circumstances. One neighbor said, "If it was me, I would have done the same thing." This woman was home with her young cousins, apparently, when the shooting occurred. Another neighbor told the reporters that he put his hands on a woman, 2 women at that, so he deserved what he got.
Domestic violence is such a terrible, terrible thing to have to live through. And I commend this female for getting a firearm for her house, because apparently this was a pattern with the father of her children.
Yeah.
So she knew that at some point it was going to escalate. People don't wake up and say, "I want to shoot somebody." They have the firearm there just in case they need to protect themselves. And this guy was choking this woman's sister, and I say she did very well to protect herself and her family.
Yeah, you don't put your hands on a woman. You don't put your hands on anybody. I mean, this applies to women too. Women can be pretty angry and crazy, just like men can. So, people need to get along or they're going to get shot.
Yep, I guess so. I have a defensive gun use that the headline says, "An armed employee saves store clerk from a serial robber with a gun." This was reported by Emmaland.com and News Now and the Review Journal. They all report that in North Las Vegas, Nevada, an attempted armed robbery ended in gunfire at a 7-Eleven. It happened around 3:30 a.m. at a store on Cheyenne Avenue and Civic Center Drive.
Nothing good happens at 3:30 in the morning.
Well, no, not really. And this is when an armed citizen inside the store shot the suspect. Preliminary information indicates that it was a vendor's employee, not a 7-Eleven employee, who was working in the store, saw the clerk being held at gunpoint, and shot the suspect. That armed citizen took action, fired at the suspect, striking the suspect, said Ann Cavarici of the North Las Vegas police. The injured suspect then ran out towards a back parking lot where he collapsed and died. Investigators are reviewing the incident, the security cameras, all to decide whether the shooter will be prosecuted. Police hope the investigation will give them a better idea as to what exactly happened during the deadly confrontation. Ann Cavarici with the North Las Vegas police goes on to say, "Obviously, we would like people to call police and allow us to handle that and not put themselves in danger." She says justifying a self-defense shooting is tricky and must be investigated on a case-by-case basis. Speaking in general terms, police say deadly force is justified when there's an imminent threat and there's a need to defend one's life or someone else's. In this case, there was an armed robbery going on and he felt he needed to take action, Cavarici said. The shooter is said to be cooperating with the investigators. The robber has been identified by the Clark County coroner as a 24-year-old from North Las Vegas. According to police, he was responsible for other robberies in the area, and police say that there were several people inside the 7-Eleven at the time of the shooting, but no one else was injured.
Sound like his number came up, in Las Vegas. Apparently he committed all these other robberies and his luck ran out, as it were.
It did.
To throw it back to the place where it happened, Las Vegas. Yeah.
North Las Vegas.
Yeah.
So he was. I say he got what was coming to him. If he was a serial robber, it was about time that somebody stepped in to stop him. Somebody
needed to put a stop to it because apparently the justice system wasn't doing a good job at that. So good for them.
And what about your defensive?
Mine comes to us from Springfield, Missouri, KSPR. Apparently a man was shot while he was trying to break into a home. And this occurred on Wednesday morning. The shooter, Mark Glidewell, told KSPR's Sheena Elzy this whole thing happened because of a jealous ex-boyfriend. He says his girlfriend's ex came there and was kicking and banging on the windows until he got through one, and that's when the shots were fired. He's not ashamed that he shot and killed the man with his deer rifle. If it happened again, I would shoot him again, said Glidewell. The man he shot, his name was Charlie Ingram, and apparently he had a long criminal history. And Glidewell says that he came here yelling and breaking windows, and finally broke into one of them in a rage over his ex, all while his ex and Glidewell were inside. I believe firmly, had he come in and I had not had a gun, he would have come in and hurt us or killed all of us, said Glidewell. Glidewell says that Ingram's threatened him before, so he put up this no trespassing or I'll shoot sign. And he had been warned to stay away, according to Glidewell. Police questioned Glidewell but did not arrest him for the shooting, saying they're looking into the case as self-defense. Glidewell said, "You don't break into anybody's house and keep on coming." And he did, and he paid the price. Ingram, the man who was shot, his family, was shaken up about his death, but didn't really want to comment too much and didn't want to believe what happened. But they did say that Ingram had been mixed up with drugs and had been in and out of jail for years. Police say they're still investigating, but still have no plans on making an arrest. So there's another,
Domestic violence
situation. Sounds kind of like a love triangle. The jealous ex who had been in and out of prison couldn't handle the fact that his girlfriend now had a new beau and just came over there raising hell and tried to hurt him.
And if he couldn't have the woman, then he didn't want anybody to have the woman. But you know what? His rage finally got the better of him. And
the guy shot him with a deer rifle too. That's got to be like, what, a 30-06 maybe?
Yeah.
So, wow, that's an interesting self-defense tool.
Well, at least he had it handy.
He did. Maybe he needs to go to the gun store and look for a handgun. They're a little bit easier to wield in a home defense situation, or maybe a nice pistol grip shotgun. That would be good too.
Well, his deer rifle took care of the threat.
Yeah, there's no mistaking that. His deer rifle did the job in this case. What do you got for defensive gun use?
Well, this comes to us from Florida.
Oh, right in our back door.
I know. Bearing Arms reported this. This happened around 9:30 p.m. on a Tuesday night. 2 armed robbers attempted to mug 3 people in Plantation Park, which is located in a Fort Lauderdale suburb. Before pulling a gun on the 3 people, 2 robbers attempted to make conversation with the victims. When one of the robbers pulled a gun on the victims, one member of the group pulled out his own firearm in self-defense. The robber was fatally shot by the concealed carrier. The second robber fled the scene. A neighbor who heard the shots ring out said, "I was in the kitchen of my house and I heard 4 shots total. The first one sounded like a firecracker, and the last 3 definitely sounded like gunshots." Another neighbor said, "I heard 5 gunshots, 3, then a couple seconds in between, and then 2 more. The concealed carrier stayed at the scene until the police arrived and has been cooperating with law enforcement officials. According to police, the concealed carrier was licensed and permitted to carry a firearm. At this time, the name of the deceased has not been released, and police are waiting until family members have been notified." You just never know who you approach, who's going to be a legal licensed concealed carrier.
That's true. You never do. And the witnesses, it was interesting that they mentioned that they had a little trouble distinguishing between firecrackers and gunshots.
Right.
I have a personal story about that. I was sitting here at home, and I don't remember when it was. It was a few weeks maybe after the 4th of July, or maybe it was a few weeks after New Year's. I don't remember which it was. This happened a while back, and I heard a bang, and I thought, well, that sounded a little odd, but maybe it was a firecracker. The holiday had just passed, and some of the kids in the neighborhood were still using up their leftover fireworks. But as it turned out, our next door neighbor had committed suicide out in his backyard, and it's literally the next door neighbor, like right over our fence, and he shot himself in his backyard with a handgun. And it's hard to tell, with buildings and everything, between a gunshot and a firecracker, because it's bouncing off of walls and whatnot, and it's sometimes really hard to tell. That's why a lot of times witnesses who are testifying in court are a little unclear even as to how many shots were fired.
Well, and the two witnesses here, one